I'm an 18-year-old male from southern state in the US. I usually don't feel uneasy and I usually feel very chill about the situation and people in public. On this day, I was spending the day in Washington DC with my friend 23 Mel. It was low energy day and all we really did was spend time looking at monuments. By early in the afternoon, we were thirsty and headed to a Starbucks for a drink. While waiting in the line, someone tapped me on the shoulder. I thought it might be someone I know, or someone was trying to get my attention. But it was actually an older 25 to 35-year-old white man with long curly red hair and scraggy beard. He told me, "Jesus is king." I responded, "Yes, I know, we're Christian." My friend did the right thing and ignored him while I was stuck making uncomfortable small talk. He told me how Jesus was always with him and how God tells him stuff. I'm Christian myself, but I don't believe what he's telling me. He told me, "God told you you were going to be a drummer." I responded, "I'm already a drummer." I have no idea how he would know or if this was a coincidence, but it freaked me out a little. He then said, "God also told me you would be a singer." My heart dropped. I'm also a singer, and this was really freaking me out. He then went on to say a bunch of things, like how he knew stuff about my mom and how he knew she prayed for me as a kid, and how I was destined to let my hair grow out. His breath smelled like weed, and it made my face really scruggy ever he spoke. Eventually he left the line and sat down. I was really uncomfortable there and stayed longer than we should have. As soon as we got our drinks, I rushed out my friend, asked out quickly as possible. I had really uneasy feeling and I did not feel good until a while later. On the day this happened, I was with my girlfriend. I'm also female. We were just both under 5 foot tall and maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. The point is, we're tiny. But anyways, on to the story. On this particular day, it had been raining outside and seemed like the perfect weather to stay curled up inside watching movies. One problem, we didn't have snacks, so my girlfriend and I decided to walk to a mini market just down the street. As we were walking, we noticed there was a man trailing some distance behind us and he was muttering to himself, talking under his breath. At first, we paid no mind to it, as there's a fairly large number of homeless people in our area, and sadly many have mental illness. We continued walking and noticed he was still behind us. Weird, I thought to myself. We get inside the store and start packing out our snacks, and I noticed he was standing right outside the store, appearing and staring directly at us. At this point, I'm a little worried, but when we checked out, he was no longer there, so I brushed it off. Further down the street from the store, there was a Starbucks, so we decided to stop and get some coffee before walking back to her house. The entire walk, I felt like we were being watched and I just couldn't shake the feeling of uneasiness. We walk into Starbucks and ordered our drinks and sit down to wait. I looked out the window and there's that same guy again. He crossed the street, but he was still staring right at us. At this point, I'm freaking out and trying to tell my girl this creep was following us, but she insisted it's nothing. The next time I looked up, the guy is inside the Starbucks and staring at us with a look I can describe as purgatory or hungry. I'm terrified at this point. We grab our drinks and are getting ready to head out, and he yells out, "Hey, there you are." Heads turns to see what was the commotion about, and he calmly says, "That's my niece and daughter. I told them not to go anywhere without telling me." My girlfriend decides to react at this point and grabs my hand, and we nope the fuck out of there. We speed walk down the street, hoping to put some distance between us before he can react. I turn back around and see that he was still following us. He's not chasing us after all. He was landing in the way and has a menacing look on his face. This guy was pretty built and close to 6 foot. There's no way we can take him off if it came down to it. We do the only logical thing we can think of and started running. This is when he started chasing us and screaming out, "Don't go. Don't you want to play?" The road back to my girlfriend's house is pretty isolated with no houses for a few more blocks, and we were running away from the only area where there would be people. At this point, he's gaining on us, and I think that any minute he will catch us up and would be the end. This guy is maybe around 10 feet behind us when, miraculously, we saw a car coming down the street. We started running towards it, waving our hands and yelling, trying to get this car to stop. It does, and we frantically start telling the driver that this guy is following us. The driver steps out, and the would-be creep stops dead in his tracks. He stands protectively in front of us and says something along the lines of, "Just walk away, buddy, you don't want any trouble." The creep stares at us down and then gives us the creepiest smile I've ever seen, shrugs his shoulders, and walks back to the street. The driver insists on seeing us home and trails behind us the rest of the walk until he sees we're safely inside. Thinking back, we should have just called the cops, but we were too scared to think straight. Thank God for good Samaritans. I shudder to think what could have happened if that car had not stopped, or this guy actually caught up to us. Once, last summer, my friends and I went to a Starbucks right by our houses. We just wanted it to relax, drink our coffee, and have a good time. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. After we ordered our drinks, we sat down on one of the couches and just hang out. Then, all of a sudden, some older guy, he was probably in his late 40s or 50s, walked in, paused, looked around, and then just stared at us for a couple of seconds. I wasn't aware he did this until my friend Brittany pointed it out later on. He came up to us and shouted, "High five." I refused to give him a high five, and Megan and Brittany awkwardly high-fived him. The guy stood in front of us and started asking a lot of questions. The conversation went something like this. "So, how old are you?" Good." We started laughing awkwardly after this. He then asked us, "So, what school do you go to?" Megan, feeling creeped out, "I don't think I want to tell you," she said. The old guy gives Megan a creepy smile and looks directly at me and says, "Is she a bad girl?" I start laughing uncontrollably. At this point, I was really freaking out and I didn't know what else to say. The old guy stares at us for a little bit and then walks towards the counter. Brittany, Megan, and I started whispering about what the fuck just happened. We were definitely creeped out by this guy. I asked them why he gave us a high five, and they said that they thought he knew one of us. We certainly did not know him. All of a sudden, Megan said he was staring at us, and when I looked up, he was standing by the counter waiting for his drink, and started staring at us with an ugly smile. At that moment, all three of us got up and left, and went to a Smith that was right next door and waited for a little bit until we felt safe to go outside. After loitering around Smith for around 10 to 15 minutes, we walked outside and didn't saw him again. We went back to the Starbucks and hang out for a little bit until Megan got picked up by her mom and left. Now, since we live close to Starbucks, Brittany and I started walking home, but we still felt incredibly uncomfortable. We kept looking over our shoulders just to make sure that that old guy wasn't following us. Thankfully, we got safely home to my house and hang out there until my dad got home. My dad used to be a cop, and we told him about the old creep and how he made us uncomfortable. My dad kinda laughed it off, as the guy didn't really have done anything illegal except make us super uncomfortable. After that, we never saw him again. However, later on, Brittany told me how when he walked into Starbucks, he would scan the cafe and how he would pick the three of us from the rest of the coffee lovers there. Also, when he originally asked, "Is she a bad girl?" I thought he was talking about my friend Megan, but it turns out he was talking about me. That just made me even more creeped out than ever before. However, I still go to that Starbucks to this day, and I haven't seen him. I'm glad I haven't run into him, but I'm worried that maybe he's doing the same thing to other teenage girls. I can only hope not. So, a couple of years ago, I worked at Starbucks. I have a lot of creepy stories from this Starbucks. Anyways, I was in an interesting location. If you take a left out of the parking lot, you're in a high crime area. If you take a right, you're in an affluent area. Anyways, the incident occurred during a morning shift. I was working the window when this guy pulled up in his car. I told him his total, handled his payment, and then turned to hand him his drink. As I'm leaning out the window, he smiles and says, "You are cute enough to take." I'm thinking, weird compliment, but whatever. When the smile sides right off his face, it was creepy as hell. So he drops his smile, and instead of taking the drink like a normal human being and leaving, he grabs my arm and pulls as hard as he can. This man is legit trying to pull me out to the drive-thru window and into his car. Immediately I use my other arm to grab into the side of the window, and I start pushing myself away from him. The co-worker standing next to me starts screaming and grabs me by the waist and pulls as hard as she can. My arm pops out of his grasp and the co-worker and I hit the ground. The creepy man speeds away. If it hadn't been for the co-worker, I would have most likely got in, as this group was really strong. Needless to say, this was one of the most scariest experiences that I have ever encountered in my life.